Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studio. And it's summertime, and I know it's like I'm missing a couple, but I'm coming back with a lot of heat. No pun intended for the summertime. And when we think about summer, when we think of Detroit is Different, we're thinking creativity. Doing things in spaces and places that usually don't happen will more than likely get you an invite on this podcast. If I run across you and I'm like, okay, that's different. That's out the box. And somebody that's different, out the box, definitely a connected creative is the guest for today. So let me introduce you to somebody that you already may know, and if you don't, guess what? Thank me for the introduction. Achsha, how you feeling today?
Man, I feel good. Thank you so much for having me, Kari. This is cold. Like, I love this. This is amazing.
Thank you. So this is the studio. It's been long a-coming. So with that
Only
being
like a
said,
year.
long a-coming. So with that being said, let's kick things off in the traditional Detroit is Different story. You and your people, how did you get to Detroit? Are you first generation, second generation, third? Like, what's the Detroit story of you and the fam?
That's what's up. Fourth generation Detroiter on my mom's side.
Fourth
generation.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to where did they migrate from before coming to the D?
I'm not sure. So on my mom's side, I know that my mother's grandmother was born in Detroit, raised in Hamtramck. That's where my grandmother was raised. And then my mom, all of us West Siders off Dexter. And then my dad's parents are from Macon, Georgia. My mother's father is from Kentucky. But yeah, so on my mom's side, all the women, fourth generation Detroiter.
Okay, so Hamtramck.
Yeah.
And if people don't know, Hamtramck is a city inside the city. So Detroit has two cities in the city. Hamtramck's one, Highland Park is the other.
Yep.
Highland Park's like right here. And they're both next to each other too. So
That's the crazy part.
You know, like it's not like Highland Park is here and Hamtramck's over there. They're
back up to each other.
Yes. So with that being said, like the culture of Hamtramck, for a lot of Detroiters, even though these cities are within a city, if you're not close to these cities or have people over there, you may not even go there. Hamtramck's definitely one of those cities where right now it's a little bit more attention with the cultural fair and things like that.
No doubt.
I know a little bit from my time, especially delivering food, just
Right.
all of the Eastern European culture, the Arab culture, beyond just the Iraqi, but Iranian, Bangladesh.
They
Definitely
heavy.
a Bengali culture.
Bengali,
like,
yeah.
it's a lot. Was it like that when you were younger? Do you remember connecting with it?
So by the time I came around, my grandparents,
Long.
yeah, long ago. So
Long out
my
that
grandmother, my mom's mom, grew up in Hamtramck, married my grandfather, and they were on the east side for a while somewhere, and then they bought a house off Dexter, which is the same house that I grew up in.
Dexter and what?
Dexter and the Boulevard, Grand River. So Dexter and Hogarth specifically,
Wow.
between Dexter and Homer. So about what's that, 3 blocks north of the Boulevard?
Yeah.
Right over there by Northwestern, your alma mater. Wasn't far from what used to be Angel Elementary, which was torn down in like the 80s. So the thing was, Hamtramck started off as a Polish community, but when they put the GM plant there, that's what really devastated it and broke it all the way up. So when you think about the GM plant destroyed, I think it was something like 13 churches and a bunch of schools and a number of houses, and it broke up the community. And so that's when you started to see different generations of immigrants who were there. But my grandmother was raised there. She was born in 1922. Her and my granddad bought the house on Hogarth in 1952, I believe. My mom and dad got married in 78. And then by 83, my father discovered smokable cocaine out partying, didn't know that smokable cocaine was what we now know to be crack. And it ruined everything in our family. So we ended up within a couple years going from being my dad working in Michigan Bell, making bank, 70-something K, 73,000 in 1983, to us living with my grandparents, my granddad, because my grandmother had passed away by that point. By 86, we were living with my grandfather on Hogarth.
Now, and we've shared and had this story before because it was just so impactful. But even before we get into that, as much as let's get into that neighborhood,
Yeah.
beforehand. So that Dexter footprint. What was it like as a kid? Like seeing Dexter, as I know my experience on Dexter. Shout out to Kash Doll, whole new album back on Dexter. Definitely going into a journey of certain things on Dexter. You know, it's one of those iconic streets. The way that like people always talk about, like on the east side, it's like Mac and Bewick. Like
Right,
you ain't,
right,
like,
right,
you
right,
ain't
right.
off Dexter. Like I don't know what it is about Dexter that captures so many more people's attention, because I'm also a Linwood guy. I'm also
Yeah.
a 12th Street guy.
There you go.
They're in the same footprint, but
No doubt.
Dexter almost has like it's like a legacy or something that's in different portions. What was it like for you as a kid? What do you remember?
I remember community, and I also remember it was hell. Like, because the crack epidemic hit that neighborhood hard. So my mom tells the story. So my family on both sides grew up in the neighborhood. My dad, he was off of like Lamoth and Linwood over there. And so he talked about how growing up, you know, the neighborhood was great. Even before the riots, everything was walkable and beautiful. And then the riots happened. My mom talks about being able to stand on her porch and watch the tanks rolling down Grand River in 67. She had just turned 8 years old. So she saw the neighborhood change. By the time we got there, it was still very community centered. So my mom graduated high school in 77. My dad, I think, was 75.
What schools?
Northwestern. All of
she
them.
went to
All
North-
my,
yeah,
yeah. My
okay.
whole family, both
Shout
sides.
out Coates, the mighty Coates.
Hey. She was there when Ray Parker Jr. was there. A couple of my aunties were there when the Collegians were there. You know, Anita Baker went to, like, it's a lot of temptation. Like, all those folks. My mom graduated out of the new building versus the old building that had been further down, closer to Grand River. Anyhow, she and my dad tell the stories about, like, what the neighborhood was like. And I remember Horner's Music over there on Grand River. You can get your hair cut at Tennant's Barbershop, which was in the, like, the side entrance basement of one of them big old houses. But what you saw in the neighborhood was generations of people, because you had these gigantic dumb houses. Like our house, I took it for granted that everybody had a big old house like that. But you're talking about houses that are off the boulevard. The boulevard was Detroit's original border, if you think about it. Like the original border of Detroit was the boulevard. Then it was Outer Drive. So you see those stately homes on these areas that are the borders of the city. But proximity to Paquette plant, to GM, to Fisher building, all that stuff is on the boulevard. So our house was probably 3,000 square feet, you know, a bunch of toilet. It was just a big house. But what we saw in that neighborhood was generations of people who were doubled up. So we lived with my granddad. A lot of my mom's friends lived with their parents too, and their kids did. So I grew up with the children of my mother's friends from high school, which was nuts. But then the crack epidemic started to change everything. So you started to see people losing their homes because the older parents are dying off. They're leaving their property to these kids who a lot of times are on drugs or have drug problems. It's a lot of teenage pregnancies. I remember summer of 87, 88, watching a shootout happen on my block. And the crazy part was, it's the middle of the day. I'm in the living room watching TV. We got this big old picture window, and I hear pop, pop. I'm thinking it's fireworks. And I'm like, my rational brain is saying, why is somebody shooting fireworks in the daytime? So I want to go see the fireworks. And it's two dudes chasing each other down the street. And in my head, I think they're pushing the guns at each other when really it's the recoil of them firing the guns. One of the guys had a revolver. The other one had like a semi-automatic. And I'm looking out the window like a dummy. My mother runs from the kitchen and like tackles me and dives on the floor. Get out the window. Because back then kids were dying, you know, from drive-bys or from whatever, from stray bullets, all that. So the Dexter that I remember was Comcast turning the cable on and giving you all the channels to keep you inside during Devil's Night. So from like a couple days before Halloween to a couple days after, if you didn't have HBO and Showtime and Cinemax, they would turn on all the channels to incentivize people to stay home because everybody was setting stuff on fire. But I also remember my next door neighbor, Miss Cox, who helped to raise my mom. My neighbor across the street, Miss Maddie. Like, I remember the neighborhood being full. I remember block parties. I remember the swimmobile. I remember the bookmobile coming down the block. I remember the fruit guy. You know what I'm saying? So Dexter was a community, but you could see how people who had the means to move would get up and bounce. And with good reason, because it was turning into just a haven. It was turning into a place that was known for YBI. Like my dad getting mixed up in drugs, caught a beat down from YBI and ended up in the hospital for a long time behind that. YBI started off Dexter. A lot of people don't realize that Young Boys Incorporated, you know who they are. Like, you couldn't be from around there and not know who them cats were. And it's these little kids, legitimately, like middle schoolers and high schoolers, who were terrorizing the neighborhood. So it was beautiful and it was terrible. My favorite aunt and uncle lived and still live over in Bagley. And the schools were better over there. They tore down Angel Elementary in like 88, 89, somewhere in there. So my mom would lie and say that we lived at my aunt and uncle's house on Pennington so we could go to the schools over there, Bagley Elementary, Hampton, over there by Mumford. And I just remember having this sense of dread every time we would get out of school, we walk to my auntie's house, she'd cook us dinner, help us with our homework, my mom would pick us up after work, and then we driving back down Dexter to go home. And it was just always this feeling of like, you know what I mean? But it's always this sense of pride too. Like, first off, I ain't no punk. You can't be no punk coming up off Dexter. You know what I'm saying? So you take your lumps, but it's a lot of PTSD that's associated with it, but it's a lot of pride too, because it's like, if you can make it off Dexter, you can make it downtown. You know what I'm saying? Because if nothing else, you came out alive. And I know so many people who didn't, who became parents way too young. There was a girl that lived down the street from us who was a 28-year-old grandmother. How's that possible? Because she had a baby at 14 and her son had a baby at 14. So you 28 years old, a grandmother. This was the daughter of one of my mother's homies from high school who ended up getting strung out on crack. That lady, she was the neighborhood crackhead. They called her Crackhead Dottie. She would stand out by the store and try to hustle people to, help them get change to their car for money. One day she knocked on our door with my bicycle and said, "Where your mama at?" And I'm like, "Why you got my bike? This ain't your bike." I'm like, "It's got my stickers on it. Like, what is you talking about? That's my bike. Where your mama at? Stay out of grown folk." And I'm like, "Dottie, give me my bike." And I'm like 9. Give me my bike back. She done stole my bike. So now it's like, you got to chain up your grill. You got to, sneak in Christmas presents and garbage bag. Like, all that. But I saw it evolve. It wasn't always that way, because visiting my grandparents before, crack really hit and before we moved there, it was a different story. It was still that community. But the devastation of the riots really left its footprint really heavy in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I think as I always talk about, like, America itself has a relationship with drugs, a strong relationship with drugs. So the show that just ended, Snowfall, especially like in its like first and second season, introducing through a lens of a variation of the story of Freeway Ricky Ross, how crack was looked at in our community.
Yep.
So people in my age, when we were younger, would say, "Man, how would you smoke crack? How would you smoke crack?" Because cocaine at the time was seen as a luxury drug.
Yep.
It was seen as a designer drug.
Yep.
People knew that, like, oh, it's Studio 54, all of the entertainers, all the actors, all the best athletes, all the musicians,
Coke.
all of the everyone. This is a sign of opulence.
Yep.
And now we have a version of it at a reasonable
An
rate
affordable version of it.
that I'm gonna try, because I wanna be like the stars. I wanna be,
And I don't have to snort it. Black folks, we not too keen on snorting stuff. So, I can try cocaine and I can just smoke it like I smoke a
it's
joint.
weed. Yeah.
Cool.
And not knowing necessarily the impacts
That's
of
right.
what that addiction was. And oftentimes, like, people talk about like the crack era, and just, I'm such a dive into history, because it's been iterations in the black community where heroin has like wrapped up these same communities in the same ways
100%.
as black communities at times, as we talk about that American relationship with drugs, are seen as the spaces and places for, I would say, like younger white Americans to experiment, whether it be like with alcohol,
Yep.
drugs, sex, like just a lot of different things. Like, that's been a space for generations in America. But this relationship with drugs in America exists strong. And then even when we think about heroin and the opioid epidemic of today, and what exists in the way society looks at it,
Yep.
as like, okay, this is an illness that people struggle with, versus during what was happening as crack cocaine was more prevalent in our communities, people being looked at as helpless, weak, criminals, and then that even turned and criminalized the ones that sold it as well, which led right into this prison industrial complex, where now you have a lot of those people that were young members of YBI, because at the time the drug laws were like, if you were younger, you would not face the same jail time. So it made more sense and logical reasons to say a 12 and a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old is a better carrier and distributor of drugs than a person that's 20 that will face years.
100%.
Those drug sentencing laws changed to allow for the 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds to end up like a lot of those guys. When we think about like Best Friends, YBI, and a lot of these drug
kingpins
groups,
Rico,
would, you know, maybe for 3 years sell drugs and then end up, you know, being 19 and spend you know 15, 20, 25, 40 years
in
incarcerated.
Prison. Absolutely.
You know, and with when we think of White Boy Rick's story, he, even as an informant, he still faced some of those same fates, which I do think that his story is more glamorized, just him being a white guy in this space and place.
But when you think about you talked about the prison industrial complex, and many people know and a lot of people don't, the sentencing differentiation between powder cocaine and crack cocaine.
Yeah.
Crack cocaine is a derivative of powder cocaine, but you have to have 100 times in weight more of cocaine than crack to get a similar sentence. So what that means, if you got 5 grams of cocaine, you got 5 grams of crack, you can get a 25-year mandatory minimum sentence for having crack cocaine. You'd have to have 500 grams of cocaine, which would make, 5,000, if my math is right, grams of crack in order to get the same sentence. You're not getting a mandatory minimum on cocaine with that. That was something that was done in the 90s during the war on drugs, but it affected black and brown folks in a way that it did not affect people. And it's addiction. At its core, all of it is addiction. Heroin, cocaine, crack, alcohol, it's all addiction. And we've criminalized it because it allows for profit. I mean,
many things in this. And then a lot of, like, as we talk about this, at the time, Hillary Clinton spoke to it. This is around the time when Bill Clinton, her husband, was in office. And then our current president, Joe Biden, was big behind the crime bill, as they say, the 94 crime bill. We hear so much of it. But inside this 94 crime bill, many of the black legislators supported this, too, because they saw this as a way of, quote-unquote, cleaning up the community without recognizing the ways that it would incentivize small towns. Like we think about Algiers, Iona, many of these small towns throughout Michigan and Oklahoma's and Virginia, like
West Virginia.
The whole society is anchored by a prison.
Yes.
And this is even such an interesting dynamic for those that have gone on a journey to visit someone in prison to recognize that, like, okay, it's like Disney World. It's like Orlando and Disney World. Man. That a prison is basically the marketplace for a whole city. And then this led into like privatizing of prisons. But even before we get to that, it was like a great 30 for 30 documentary that talks about the story of Len Bias, the basketball player that tragically had, as they say, like more a closer form of fish scale based cocaine. And this led to like a lot of the Just Say No campaigns. Like seeds were being planted to lead into the design of what became the 94 crime bill way before, supported by many black folks.
I don't disagree.
At the time.
Yeah.
But we had no idea what impact that this would have on the community in the future that now exists, where we have, you know, it went from like, you're right, like seeing our loved ones, a generation up, fathers, mothers, aunts, uncles struggling with the crack addiction, to now, you know, people like me and you seeing our peers serve 20 years.
Life
usually
sentences.
With usually black men. Oftentimes it'd be so weird. It's like so many had children like right before they were sentenced.
90% of all prisoners are parents. 90% of all prisoners are parents. And that's something that isn't talked about. Like, my dad ended up going to jail unrelated to drugs from, I don't know, like 95 to 03, something like that. But 90% of all people who are incarcerated are parents. So when you think about single parenthood, when you think about what it does, but beyond the buoying of an entire city's economy, to your point of prisons being the Disney World of an Ionia, Michigan, or somewhere like that, or any of these small rural towns, you have to think about the impact that exists in terms of what prison labor is doing for Fortune 500 companies. People don't talk about that enough, that you'll have prisoners making computer chips, prisoners making furniture for universities under the auspice and under the guise of, we're training these people for when they get out. But these
also, it's like, hey, I'd rather make 15 cents an hour, and that's the type of money you make when you're incarcerated. And yeah, you're right, legit, because there's still a lot of illegal stuff happening in prison.
No. I was saying legitimately, it is 15 cents.
I know. That's what I'm saying. So
but also legit money.
Yeah,
yes,
that too. But and I guess when we say legitimate or illegitimate based on the laws of
no
this
doubt.
nation,
No doubt.
my moral compass, as people know, my moral compass, even though this may be incriminating myself, is defined by my moral compass, meaning that my moral compass can be higher in certain circumstances, or possibly somebody may say lower circumstances,
or right in line with what people are saying, what's legislated.
Yeah, many times,
no doubt.
I do think, like, when we think about the way that the industry of that and what comes from that industry, and even just the delivery of music services, book services, food services, like. And what happens during this journey, and a brother or sister, they like, hey, I'd rather take this 15 cents, do something over here, than be in lockdown for 22 hours.
True.
So you know what? I'll make whatever.
I agree.
Give me pennies on the dollar.
But I remember.
And it's exploiting. Obviously, this is exploiting the person in this predicament.
Think about the phone call situation. I remember my dad had to be 2002, was still locked up, and he called me. We talked for 30 minutes, and it cost me $60 to talk to him for 30 minutes. My dad, I get a check in the mail from the state of Michigan, and on the memo line, it was remitted from Juan Solomon, and it has his prisoner number. And I was like, how long did it take you to save up enough money to send me a check for $50, bro? Yeah. When he was making 18.5 cents an hour. Wow. Literal, and he was making more than the other guys because he's a master electrician. He used to work for Michigan Bell, so he's training these guys on how to do journeyman stuff and whatever skilled labor things he could teach them at the prison that he was in at the time. And it's like, how long has this been going on? Where this antiquated system, nobody even has a house phone anymore. They've since been able to migrate it over to cell phones or whatever. But collect phone calls, it was ridiculous. 30-minute call cost me $60.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this is something that's been happening for a very long time. And the truth of the matter is, in order for it to stay up, you have to send more people there.
More people to prison.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the boom of the privatized prisons that comes in the mid-90s, oozing over into the 2000s.
Early
because
odds,
many people don't know. Many services are privatized, but definitely prisons. I mean, it's incentives in the cost for that bed. It's incentives for a person to be locked up.
Aramark, Sodexo. Aramark was sued several years ago because the food that they were serving to the prisoners had maggots in it. It was disgusting, horrible food that pigs shouldn't eat, and they were serving it to prisons. What really messes my mind up, Aramark also serves food to children and to Meals on Wheels. Nothing against capitalism, but the trays in a lot of the elementary schools look exactly like the trays you see in prison. Same food, same tray, same clock around a cage, same cement bricks, same metal detectors. There really is a school to prison pipeline that's determined by a child's literacy level in 3rd grade. That's why there's this big push, especially by Detroit Public Schools and a lot of these public school academies, to make sure that students are up to the proper reading level in the 3rd grade, because we know that if they aren't, chances are they'll end up in prison.
So let's explore that a little bit in your school journey. Being that you're seeing and dealing with the things that shouldn't be normalized, but are normalized in communities like ours, How was your journey through school? Because Bagley, that community is a different type of community. It has a rich tradition. It has homeowners that have been there for a long time that stayed even through some of the storms that hit,
no doubt,
systemically black communities across America.
Yeah.
What was your school journey like?
So I started off in kindergarten at Bagley, and then I went to Angel Elementary in my neighborhood in first grade. That year, my brother and I both got ringworm in our head, and my brother had a knife pulled on him who was in first grade. So my mother took us out of there, and we ended up at a Christian school for second and third grade for me, which would have been third and fourth grade for him. Then we went back to Bagley. The difference between a Christian school and a public school was very, very wide. Even as what would I have been, 8, 9 years old in fourth grade, I didn't curse. I didn't use conjunctions. I did not speak that way. I didn't say ain't. Like, I spoke the King's English and got bullied for it and was told that I was white. And I can remember having a best friend who was the only white girl in the whole school. Her name was Caressa. And she was bullied mercilessly because she was white. And I didn't understand it. Like, growing up in church, there's plenty of people who aren't black. One of my mom's best friends was a white lady named Jill. So it's like, what do I have against this girl because she's white? We were best friends. And I remember back in those days, we used to have music class. And you would have a music book, and the teacher would play the piano, and you'd have to sing this song. So they had this song called Donkey Riding. And the kids in the class said honky riding.
That's funny.
Now,
Hilarious.
I didn't know what a honky was. I thought they were just being funny and saying it. So after class, I'm like, Caressa, did you hear us? We were all saying honky. Isn't that funny? And she was like, Achsha, why would you say that? And I'm like, what happened? And so I'm upset. I get in the car. My mom's like, what's wrong? And I said, Caressa's mad at me. And she's like, why? I said, because something about we were singing honky right. And she's like, Achsha, that's a bad word for white people. And I'm like, so the next day I apologized to her. She didn't come back to the school that next year. So no, she didn't. So what's interesting is that I was bullied because I didn't wear Ewings or Jordans or Nikes or the Cortezes or whatever were popular back then. I wore Pro Wings, the Payless version of sneakers. And I can remember at the end of the school year at the promotion ceremony for fourth grade, some kids were looking at the trophies on the stage, and they were like, Achsha, you got highest achiever. And I was like, these kids are messing with me. Like, whatever, dude. And they called my name, and I got highest achiever. And I was like, I wasn't even trying. Like, A's are easy. Like, I don't know if it was the private school education. I've always just been a good student. So same thing happened in fifth grade. Got highest achiever in my grade outside of, like, the gifted class. Sixth grade, just as I'm starting to get some friends in fourth and fifth grade, they moved me into the gifted class. And things don't go very well for me socially, but academically they go great. End up at Hampton Middle School, 7th and 8th grade. Actually, it was Hampton Junior High School. The distinction being a middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. A junior high school is 7th, 8th, and 9th. Because
let me come in with the Hampton, because I went to Halle.
Hey,
Hampton kids would be like, hey, them Hampton kids is crazy,
man. But, and them Halle kids was bougie.
Yes, definitely. So, I think this is in that same sense of, like, as people say, like, my mom would say playing the dozens, or we say capping on people, but it definitely comes at the expense of, like, inside the school. We kind of see this on, like, we see a slight version of this on Abbott Elementary.
Yes.
Slight versions, because it's nothing like really what it is. Because some of the jokes are hilarious that these kids have, because it's a defense mechanism.
Yep.
You don't have much, so I'm almost like I'm going to fight everybody before anybody can sort of kind of fight me.
Absolutely.
And also, so it could be, it's your weight. It's your, definitely me. I was a
fat kid.
Weight,
yeah, me too.
It'll be clothes. It'll be, your mama, your daddy, almost like whatever. Even sometimes it'd be the opposite. It's like you got too much money. It's like you are too smart. You like this weird hazing, I guess that's the best way, definitely took certain it pushed buttons of others harder than others.
No
you know
doubt.
What I'm saying? Because it's not like you're joining in. But the minute you walk into, I would say definitely like a school setting, especially like black school, it's on.
Yeah.
Meaning like it's just a part of it. I think now I don't have like as much of a pulse in it, but I still sort of see it when I visit some schools when people say, "Hey, speak to the kids," because I've even seen like kids will snap on the guest speaker. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just. It just is what it is.
I don't know if that's a black kid. I think it's definitely a black kid thing. I think it's rougher in places like Detroit, and you see it more so with kids who are poorer.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the defense mechanism of it.
Yeah.
And when I say black, meaning like I definitely think it happens with white kids too, because this is what kids do. But the cunningness and how sharp it is, like in the hood, it's like no, we're going for as much as we could.
Going for the gusto.
Yeah,
no, I agree, and that was definitely my experience at Bagley, at Hampton. I was at Hampton 7th and 8th grade, and then heard about this school called DSA, the Detroit High School for the Fine and Performing Arts, now just known as the Detroit School of Arts. It's not in the location that it's in now. It was over by Murray Wright. Now Frederick Douglass, I think, is the school. So it was on like.
It was basically on like 12th and 14th.
12th and Calumet.
Closer to like Grand River.
Yep,
so
right
for
off
people
Grand
that
River.
know, it would be in the
Woodbridge.
footprint of Woodbridge. That's the best.
Woodbridge neighborhood.
Woodbridge, not far from Motor City Casino.
Not far from Wayne. It was closer to Wayne State than Motor City
Wayne
Casino.
State, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yep. So right up the street from old Murray Wright in the Wilbur Wright building. And so a lot of people call that old DSA. That's where Leah went. She was a year ahead of me. She was in 97. I graduated in 98. And DSA, I think, really saved me because otherwise I would have ended up at either Northwestern, which was my neighborhood school because we still living off Dexter, or at Mumford, which was the school that I would have come to from Hampton. And I didn't want to go to either of those schools. So I started playing percussion at Hampton and was really good. I was very blessed because our music teacher was a drummer. And for some reason, not a lot of kids was interested in music class, so it ended up just being a drum class. So one of the cats that I started playing drums back then, he's actually like the bass player for Charlie Wilson now. He was a terror. Great drummer though, great musician overall. And so I remember my audition for DSA, going to this weird little building. We would have been the third graduating class, and the teacher, Mr. Quick, he goes, "Play your piece," and I played the piece. I knew how to read music. I could read rhythms but not notes. And so as a drummer, you know, unless you're playing, marimba or glockenspiel, which people call a xylophone, then, or bells, I knew how to read rhythms but not notes. So I played my audition piece, and I knew all of my rudiments because my music teacher was a percussionist. So he's like, give me this rudiment, give me that rudiment, and ticked them off. No problem. Got into the school. I have a brother who's now my late brother. He passed away, but he was a year ahead of me. He went to Hampton up to 9th grade and then went to Davis Aerospace. And then he saw me thriving at DSA, and it wasn't far. We could hop on the Grand River bus from the house. He's taking 3 buses to get to the east side to go to Davis. He ends up transferring.
Let's change that right now.
No doubt. So he came over midway through his 10th grade year, started off playing trumpet, and then would end up on clarinet, and just blew up. Like he ended up being a concert master in A band. I started off in B band, and he would eventually get a scholarship to a full ride to Howard, which he turned down and went to Michigan.
Now, I know more of this story because my big sister Dar was one of those kids from DSA, that early old school DSA.
Yep.
And I was just talking to Dar, and I was like, okay, and we were just talking about projects. She works in film and everything. I was like, you really need to focus on a documentary about Dr. Cotton right now.
Ooh, that'd be amazing.
Because it was a lot of intentionality that went into that school, and really I've never, as my mom was an involved parent always, but definitely a DSA, but it was more than just my mom, it was other parents. Like the energy just felt different at that school. Like if Fame really was like a place, it really felt like
we were the Fame school more so than the school that Fame was based on.
Yes.
The LaGuardia School for the Arts, which is the school that Fame is based on. Watch the movie Fame. That's what our building looked like for real.
Seriously, you would walk through the halls. It would be dancers dancing.
People in their leotards.
People playing drums and trumpet. It would be artists in the hallway doing art. Like, it really was like you were walking into dynamic creativity.
No doubt.
And the arts, and I'm just speaking from a person, from the kid, like observing from being there, because my sister was like double promoted like twice, so she was real young there. But like seeing this is like, huh? What? Like it felt as though art, and this is just from the outside in, and I want your take on it.
Yeah. Took
a back seat to everything else. Meaning like at a lot of other schools with disciplines, it seems like, okay, you're gonna get your academics and then you can get a little bit of your quote unquote elective in. It was like, nah, we gonna do art. And almost like the elective is math, science, and whatever else.
So we had a 1 to 9. So we was at school from like 7 something in the morning to 4 something in the afternoon. And if you had studio, that was your 10th hour. So we was at school 7 something to 5 something every day. Most, like, especially band kids. So I'm on drumline. The days that we don't have marching band practice, we have drumline practice. So you got all your normal classes. That's your 1 to 5. Then you got 3 music classes, and then your lunch, and then you have performances, and then you have, so your art was your ticket. It's almost like if you're a student athlete. We didn't have sport. We didn't have a gym. Like our phys ed was dance and CPR. So like we didn't have a gymnasium. We had classrooms and bathrooms. That was it. We had a classrooms where we studied there were dance rooms and whatnot, but we didn't have a theater. When we had performances, we had to go to other schools. We would go to DSO, we would go to Cass, we would go to sometimes Murray Wright. We would have to go to other schools because Dr. Cotton, back then, who was still Dr. Davis, she got married the year after we graduated. She was Dr. Davis. She had to prove that this could work. And DSA had this attitude of it's us against everybody. Yeah. And it was real because it's like, look at this. They weren't just giving new schools out to principals back then. She fought for years to make it happen. It's funny, when you saw me today, you said you got on your DSA colors, because black and yellow. Or it was gold and black or gold and black. Yeah. Dr. Cotton came from Martin Luther King, same colors. She was like famous over there. I forget what her role was, but everybody still talks about who Dr. Davis was at Martin Luther King. They had the same colors. I wear these colors because it matches my brand, but it's ironic that it also matches, my school. That's the only place I graduated from. I don't have a college degree, so I never graduated from a college. So that's the one place that I can put on my wall. You know what I'm saying? There's an immense pride, kind of like being from Dexter, being from DSA, old DSA, where we had a multi-platinum superstar who was still taking classes. Like, you would see Aaliyah walking down the hall in a leotard. Like, it was this one crazy little boy who was a 99 who used to chase her around like, Aaliyah, I love you. But everybody else was super chill about it because it was just what it was. Yeah, because the thing is, the dancers that she had in her videos, those were dancers from DSA. Like, you had people who you knew were going to make it. One of the guys I played drums with, his name is Quentin Denard. He's like he calls himself the mix god because he's a master mixer. He's won Grammys. There's another guy that I play drums with, Charles Wilson. He goes by Black Bach now. He's a classical pianist. This guy was the musical director for Justin Timberlake when he left NSYNC. John Mayer, on the Michael Jackson tour, Rihanna, like superstars in their own right. People have gone on to make careers as opera singers, as graphic designers. I just talked to Phil Simpson today, the Super Smile Man, who's got murals all over the city and has painted all over the world. Lady L Tess, like when you can tick off the names of the people who have gone on to make amazing lives and careers for themselves from old DSA. Tierra Marie, who was a chart-topping, award-winning artist. I don't really know her music, but I know that she was there in the old building. So when you talk about the experience at DSA, I went to New York for the first and only time up until 3 weeks ago when I went to New York for a day trip. I had only been in New York one time previously, and that was to play at Carnegie Hall my senior year.
That's deep.
What?
And also, and now we're going to shift to your creativity, and I want you to combine both. As y'all see, I don't know why she ain't. It's only a matter of time before she end up with one of these shows on here or somewhere. But what was it like seeing an idea come to life? And how has that impacted you bringing your ideas to life? Because
that's good.
Dr. Cotton put a lot of, because that's now, as I grow older, That's why I tip my hat more to like, wow, this is like talk about walking on faith.
A miracle.
You know
it
what
was
I'm
a
saying?
miracle.
Walking on faith. That was a lot of faith.
And she had a lot to prove. So to
seeing that and how do you put that into what you do?
I think DSA really was a great proving ground because like you see people. I saw some like there are some people who I wonder why aren't they Fantasia? Why aren't they, why weren't they on American Idol? How come they didn't? Because they had that kind of talent back then. There was this one girl who reminded me of Erykah Badu back then, because you're talking the mid-90s. Graduated in 98, started high school in 94, or 93, 94, something like that. 93. And this girl, like, the songs would come out, because nothing was on demand back then. So you hear a song on the radio, you try to record it and try to play it. And you see people who could turn around and do that thing like magic. We're sitting at the table at lunch. Drummer is making a beat on the table. Somebody freestyling. Somebody hop in and start singing. Somebody else got their trump. Like, it really was like the scene of Shady Sadie on Fame all the time. So if nothing else, it was in the ethos. It was a palpable sense of I can create whatever I want. Everybody had a music group. Everybody was singing something, because if nothing else, we're going up against institutions like Cass, Cody, all of these schools that have been around forever just to get a spot in the Thanksgiving Day Parade. This whole thing of the all-city band marching in the Thanksgiving Day Parade was not a thing back then. Back then, they would take all the Detroit high schools that wanted to possibly perform in the Thanksgiving Day Parade, and they would say, 2 schools get it. Go audition. And we'd have to go to Wayne State and perform and hope that we would win. The first year we did it, we beat Cass and unseated them dudes. You couldn't tell us nothing. It's 100 of it. We didn't even have marching band uniforms. We had these crazy looking like 70s plume collars with this like, what is that? Like a dickie that we had to strap in cummerbunds with like black pants and black shoes. And I'm sure I still had a tape somewhere, like a VHS tape of my mom taping it off of us, at the Thanksgiving Day Parade.
TV, yeah.
But they talked about, like, the commentators, like, this is the Detroit High School for the Arts, and they don't even have marching band uniforms. They rented tuxedos. I'm like, we didn't rent tuxedos.
Hilarious.
But it literally took us a couple years to save up enough money to buy marching band uniforms. And they were also our performance uniforms. You take the plumes off, or whatever the little cape was, and that would be what we were performing. So that's what we wore when we went to Carnegie Hall. But the number of things that they made happen based on creativity and a dream, $1 in a dream, for real, that's what it was. So, and up until this conversation, I don't know that I made the correlation that DSA had so much to do with that. But it's that thing of pride. Like, look at that stupid school. Like, the Grand River bus picked up Cass before us. So a lot of times the buses will be full and they pass right by us. So they flipping us off and they cussing at us, and you got to start walking towards your destination. So some days I never got on the bus. I had to walk all the way home. But it was this thing of, I got this pride because we are better than y'all. We saw Cass folks. One of the aforementioned folks that I was on the drum line with came from Cass to DSA because he knew it would be a better fit and he'd be able to concentrate more heavily on his music. Yeah, because that was the really the thing. Like, you're going to get these academics. And academically, you had people who were out here killing the game. Yeah. Your sister, your aforementioned sister.
When I say that, I don't mean like it didn't matter, but it
I
prominently took.
It was both.
Unlike.
It was both.
Oftentimes, oftentimes you hear about programs of whatever, and it could be for kids or adults, and they like kind of take art because art is taken for granted so often in society. But to me, as I always speak on creativity and collaborative creativity, because it adds the sauce. It makes life worth living. It is the most important thing. And also, obviously, we see that in when decisions are made.
Yeah.
When budgets are cut, the first thing people are cutting, especially when it's a school, is anything with arts.
No doubt. And that's the unfortunate and sad reality. So you see DSA, and it still exists, and they're having to pivot because at one time, Spain Elementary Middle, Ann Arbor Trail Elementary Middle had some of the best bands in the city. Those programs don't even exist anymore.
And it's tougher. And when we think of DSA today, shout out my cousin Maiwa, that's Mama Maiwa, that is the principal there, always holding things down.
Come on
just
now.
Seeing the flow of it and what's come. And she was one of the instructors at the old DSA too. But it's more into the art. And then I think arts produces creative thinkers like you. Like, what is the project you're bringing to life now?
Yeah.
And how are you introduced the word ethos. How are you creating that experience? How are you bringing that ethos to the energy into your creative ventures?
So my creativity started as an entrepreneur with food because I like to cook. I'm the oldest girl out of 4, so I got 2 older brothers. One of them has passed away, and I have a younger sister. So my mom, because of my dad's drug addiction, they would eventually divorce, and my mom went to work, and she was working 2 full-time jobs. So these kids still got to eat. So Achsha, who grew up cooking at her right side, you got to make sure that that your brothers and your sister eat dinner. Cool. So I grew up knowing how to cook, and sometime around 2007, I had my daughter in 2006. I was married in 2003. Was still in school, like figuring things out. I had gone to an HBCU down south. Was there for the better part of 3 years. Ended up coming home, transferring schools, and losing a gang of credits. So like starting back over, going from being like almost a junior all the way back down to a second semester freshman from the number of credits that they took.
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
the now defunct Mary Grove College. Where my daughter actually goes to high school, which is kind of cool. My mom went there. I went there for college. My auntie went there. And now my daughter's a student there. So I'm going through a separation from my husband and eventual divorce, and I'm trying to make some extra ends. And entrepreneurship is a great way to do that. You know, baby showers, you know, a funeral here or there, you know, bridal showers, whatever. Make a couple $100, cook some food, everybody's happy. That idea morphed over time, over a number of years, into me saying, I want to do a busterant. So not a food truck, because a food truck is a kitchen on wheels. I wanted to do a cafeteria on wheels. So imagine a transit bus, like a DDOT bus, where you would have someone enter through the rear door, have hot food on one side, cold food on the other side, and the food is already ready to go. So I can grab a grab-and-go salad. Let me grab some fried chicken or a taco or some plate of spaghetti from Detroit's best caterers and restaurants and bakeries and delis. And we would go from place to place. So imagine.
So almost in that ingenuity of the swim-mobile or the book-mobile.
You got it.
Like a food
Mobility.
Mobile.
100%. A busterant. So like a carry-out busterant. Because I had gotten into between, after getting divorced, I was a process server, so you got to deliver bad news to strangers. And I ended up meeting somebody very surreptitiously and ended up doing sales. I had never done sales before, but I'm an outgoing, charismatic, and very articulate, as the white folks love to tell me, person.
If you serving me a good bench warrant and I still want to turn around and give you a job offer, either 2 things is going on. You are amazing at your job, or whoever that person is that may be the salesman of ever.
So it ended up, what it was my landlord. My landlord lived in a basement apartment above the house that I rented from him. Yeah. And he got really sick and had quadruple bypass. I come home and somebody's parked in my spot, and it's this Centos van. So Centos is like the uniform people. They got these white trucks. And I'm like, who is this in my spot? So I go downstairs to check on him, see how he's doing. We have separate interests because it's a basement apartment. So I go down and I'm like, hey, Art, what are you doing? What are you up to? And he was like, come meet my son-in-law. And so I'm just down there kicking it with homeboy, and, you know, he's like, he thought I was funny and outgoing and personable. The next day, my landlord calls me. He says, my son-in-law loved you, and he thinks that you'd be a great fit to interview at this company. And he was like, it pays $35,000 a year for your base pay, plus commission. You get a company car, uniforms. I'm like,
say less.
Say less, my guy. And so the homeboy tells me, he said, listen, I can't guarantee you a job, but I can guarantee you an interview. I said, if you give me an interview, I'm going to get the job.
There you go.
And I knew it was my one shot because I'm a single mom at this point. And it really, like, when I had to do 6 interviews, a phone interview, 2 ride-along interviews, 3 interviews with managers, and then where you have to defeat the final boss, the general manager.
Let me speak for you guys. Hey, for you businesses that got multiple interviews, I know it's tough because, you know, bringing on new people to the team is difficult and all that stuff, but no more.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah.
Because now you're keeping this person in limbo, and the anxiety of that, it just gets to a point like, you wouldn't have done 17 interviews, and I don't care what job it's for.
It took 6 weeks. It took 6 weeks for this process to play out, and that was quick. Yeah. And that was because I had gotten a referral. It's an old boys. So I did 6 interviews, and after I was offered the job, it was a conditional offer of employment pending the outcome of a background check, a credit check, a motor vehicle history check, and a drug test. Now, I had all of that covered except for the credit check, and I was on pins and needles about that. Yeah. But I ended up getting the job. Cool. But I was the first black female that had ever been hired in that division in 2009.
Wow.
So Cintas has like 5 different divisions. This was the first aid and safety division. They only had one other black person that worked in the whole in our division in Detroit. There was a space in Grand Rapids, but they had one black guy who was replaced by the current black guy, and I was replacing that black guy. And they always put the black person in Detroit, Hamtramck, Highland Park. This is 2009, so it's the height of the recession. Ain't nobody buying nothing, but you can't, like, dog, you didn't let me in here. Yeah. It's going to be a problem for y'all. So I go in there, and somehow or another, affirmations, self-actualization, with a chip on my shoulder because everybody else there has a degree and I don't, and they looking at me crazy. I got locks in my head. Homeboy, the general manager almost didn't give me the job. And he told me later why he gave me the job. So we're doing this interview, and he said he wasn't sure about me. I had no sales experience. I don't have a degree. Who is this girl, and why does she think she can sell for me? So, at the end of an interview, they'll say, do you have any questions for me? And I said, can I have the job? And so he kind of chortles a little bit, and he's like, and he starts saying something. I honestly, to this day, I don't know that I heard what he was saying, but I didn't hear him say yes. So he's like, thanks for coming in today. Do you have any questions for me? I said, may I have the job, please? So he's a little less amused now, like, okay, this is whatever. And he says more things about the culture and why it's important and da-da-da-da-da. He says, and he's like, all right, thanks so much for coming in. And I'm feeling this slip away from me. I'm like, this dude is not about to give me this job. He says, Achsha, do you have any questions for me? I said, Jason. And I'm looking him in his eye like I'm looking you in the eye. Because I'm like, I'm leaving here with something. Like, I've asked you the most important question twice, and you haven't told me yes. So if you don't have an answer to that question, no, I don't have any more questions for you.
That's deep.
And I went silent. But I did not break the glare. He eventually looked away. He looked up to the ceiling. He bit his lip, and I could see the gears grinding. And he said, well, with that, we'll give you a conditional offer of employment pending the outcome of blah, 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 blah. But I had just seen him give the job to this pretty little white girl, Lindsay, who's still there. And I was like, but he later told me over a couple beers, he said, I wasn't going to hire you. And I said, what made you hire me? He said, you asked me for the job 3 times. And I knew that if you would be that bold with me, that you would absolutely go out there and do it with customers. I said, so how do you feel about your decision? He said, it's working out so far. Never gave me the props. But I went out there, became sales rep of the month, my first month out on route, murdered the route to the extent that they ended up cutting my route and split it. Like, the route went from doing, I think it was like 10,000 a month to like 40,000 within the first month or two. They split my territory and they put me downriver, which is what gave me the idea for the bus run, because I'm going to all these manufacturing facilities. I never lost the idea of this catering that I wanted to do in my head, because if my route is doing 40K a month, that's almost $500,000 a year, because some months it's 70, some months it might be 30, but averaging about a strong 45. And y'all only paying me 40, 50, 60. The most I ever made there was 70,000 a year. I want to get a little bit closer to that $500,000. Let's cut these margins down. If I can sell for you, I can be an entrepreneur. So me being out here in Taylor, Romulus, Brownstown, New Boston, and seeing people who are on a 30-minute lunch break with no food, you can't leave, so you got to brown bag it, or vending machines, or line for the microwave. If I can do something quick where 30, 40 people can walk up, get their food, pay, and exit and actually enjoy their lunch, we doing that. 2014, I bounced. Left. Jumping off the cliff into entrepreneurship. I'm going to build the plane on the way down. We're going to figure it out. By this time, I'm remarried, and I got another baby. So I got 2 daughters at this point, married again, and I'm like, if I'm going to have a bus to run, I need to know how to drive the bus.
Good old CDL comes into play right there.
Hello. So I got a CDL, but I'm also driving school buses because it gave me the flexibility to be out here in these entrepreneurial streets exploring what's happening. Because by 2014, we're starting to see a scene develop in Detroit where businesses are doing things and there's support for entrepreneurs. There's training. So I start getting into that life. Ended up being a sales director for an unnamed transportation company. I did that for 2 years and some change. And I gave everything I had to this job. During that time, my brother died. Thank you. He died in Chicago. Spent the last 10 years of his life in Chicago. He was 36 years old, and he's a year, a month, and a day older than me. And we were as close as two people can be. Forget siblings. Like, we were like twins without being twins. And we took the mega bus to Chicago, me and my family, and we were there Friday for the funeral. We got there Friday during the day. The funeral was Friday night. We left Saturday because I had to work. I get home. I wasn't supposed to be driving, but I have a commercial driver's license. I'm the only person in the office. I'm the sales director. Only person in the office that actually has a CDL. So if something goes wrong, Achsha, we need you to. But the thing was, why don't you just say no? Just don't do it. I worked on commission. So if the owner ever had to give money back because a trip didn't go well, he would take it from the commission that I had already been paid when I sold the trip however long ago. Yeah. So we get back from Chicago, just got off a megabus. I get a call from my guy Nate, who's still my homeboy, who at the time was they called him the customer happiness expert. He says, "How bad do you want to be a hero?" And I'm like,
okay, time out. When anybody asks you a question like that, especially if they're African American, they're about to ask you to do some stuff that's very unreasonable. Continue.
Yeah, I don't want to be a hero today, Nate. Not even a little bit. And I'm like, what happened? Oh, such and such car broke down. He's in Ohio. We don't have nobody to drive this bus. And I'm like, my brother died. I know. I said, I just got back from Chicago this morning. Yo, I'm so sorry. I'll see if I can find somebody else. Let me know. Because I'm not trying to lose this commission. Yeah. My husband worked, but I'm the breadwinner. Mm-hmm. Nobody could do it. So I ended up driving this doggone bus, and my husband's pissed. Like, we just got off a bus, and now they want you back at work. It ended up working out well. It was a husband's 50th birthday party. It was a surprise from his wife. That would have ruined everything. He didn't even know the tour was going to happen. So I pulled up at their house, and he's like, oh, my God, we're going on, this Drunks of Antiquity tour. Oh, this is going to be great. And I ended up making like $100 in tips, so it was fine. And it was a good way to distract from whatever was going on. But I say all that to say you end up working in places for people in their dreams. If you don't have your own agenda, you're a part of somebody else's. So you start to see, you know what? I can do this. I had the dream to do it, and I sold that dream for this salary, for stability, for security. I sold it. And why? I would eventually get fired from that job nefariously, but man's rejection is God's protection. So I went out on my own. I started doing tours. I got this CDL, so I would do school bus tours. I would be a tour guide. I'm a historian, a self-taught historian, lover of history, lover of the city. So I'll be either the tour guide, bus driver, sometimes both, throw the headset on and give people a driving tour. And I could make money that way while I'm still working. Drove bus for Henry Ford Hospital, the shuttle bus around the neighborhood, driving school buses. I would end up at the Detroit Historical Society, which owns and operates the Detroit Historical Museum and the Dawson Great Lakes Museum, as a sales coordinator, throwing back to my experience as a sales director for experiences. So teachers would call and say, we want to book a tour at the museum, yada, yada, yada. I would hook it up for them. Cool. I started to see over and over and over again, we would set up trips for Detroit public schools that's paid for by the district. The buses are taken care of. I talked to the teacher. We booked it, confirmed it. We got a docent. We waiting, listening for the buses to pull up at 10 o'clock, 10:05, 10:10, 10:15. Let me call Miss James and see what's going on and why they're not here. Oh, we didn't have enough signed permission slips. Say what? Over and over and over again. These kids who probably have never been to the museum and won't be able to come, despite the fact that people who live in Detroit, Hamtramck, and Highland Park get a free membership to the museum, won't come down, won't go to this field trip because they don't have signed permission slips. Now, I'm a mother. I know that the permission slip problem hasn't been fixed because I'm still getting phone calls the days of field trips because I never got the permission slip. Okay. Got to try to, wait, does the baby have the right coat to be at the apple orchard today? Does she have lunch? Wait a minute. What about spending money? She don't have her hat on. She need allergy medicine. Like, I didn't know nothing about this trip. Or let's say I did get the permission slip. I got to pay with cash. So I got to stop at the gas station on the way to school. Stop at the ATM. The ATM going to charge me $3.95. Yeah. Then my bank gonna charge me $5 for using a foreign ATM. So now we up to $9. The ATM is gonna give me a $20 bill. I only need 10. So I gotta buy a honey bun first thing in the morning. That's why the back getting so big, because I'm buying honey buns at 7 o'clock in the morning when all I needed was $10. So what would it look like to create an app that would digitize permission slips? That you could have a QR code that you could scan real quick, send it to your email or your phone, fill it out on your phone. I want to pay with my card. It's a convenience fee, $2. I just saved $9 because I just paid $11 to get $10 to give to the kid. Between the convenience fee from the ATM, between the foreign ATM fee and that honey bun to break the 20, $2 is nothing. So that's where the origin of TripSlip came from. It's my experience as a bus driver. I have over 1.5 million commercial miles driven between school buses, working for Cintas, working as a process server. 1.5 million, pushing 2 million at this point, if I really sat down and calculated it. Thousands of trips that I've coordinated, sold as a sales director, thousands of trips at the museum for hundreds and hundreds of schools and teachers and districts and businesses, and being a professional chaperone as a mom, putting together trips and experiences, and as a tour guide, an experience creator, which is something I do just for funsies. You know what I'm saying? So that's where TripSlip came from. And we're putting field trips at people's fingertips, which allows a teacher to be able to create the entire experience and manage it from front to back. Right now, it's permission slips and payments, but it's growing into a network of all of your venues where you can take a kid. So whether it's a museum or a family entertainment center or an amusement park or the movies, you need transportation. 90% of the students who take transportation in Wayne County are in a transportation company's bus. Most school districts don't have their own school buses anymore. In the same way they don't have the lunch ladies, because we just talked about Aramark. In the same way that they don't have their own custodians. They're using, ABM or whoever. They're outsourcing all of this stuff, including transportation, which opens up another door. Has this bus been inspected? Are we covered on their insurance? Because if it's not, DPS uses ABC Student Transportation and Trinity Transportation. So that's considered the district's bus. So yes, if you're using one of them, you're covered. But if you use Triumph or Apollo Transportation and you don't ask to be added to their insurance, if there's an accident, you might not be covered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is your driver properly credentialed? If I show you my license now, I have 2 separate endorsements and an air brake endorsement that's not listed on my license to be able to drive a school bus. A person that drives a motor coach is not necessarily credentialed to drive a school bus.
Yeah.
There's a piece of paper that says that I have the license to drive a school bus for my continuing education. I also need a medical card. If you don't have those 5 things, you should not be driving anybody's school bus. And there's so many people who are out here because people are looking at the price.
Yeah. As a person, back when I used to do my follow the leader, back in the day, my follow the leader high school leadership workshop, and it was a field trip. Yeah, the busing was big, and making sure to coordinate. And yeah, I was talking to ABC, I've talked to Trinity, just bouncing around, and that's also just a bottleneck for many of the after school programs.
100%.
Where right now it's summer. Many of the summer programs, it's getting the students there.
Yep.
Now you have Uber and Lyft, but then depending upon the comfort of the age of the student and also the comfort of the parents in a situation like that. Whereas when it comes to many experiences, I think another advantage that you have right there in database and something like that is different experiences for different levels of students. So it's like, these immersive experiences are popping up everywhere now.
Yeah.
So it's like, on paper, it's like, okay, let's go on and take the 5th graders to see Van Gogh immersive. Probably not. You know what I'm saying? That may be more of a high school based film.
No doubt.
And then what it is and how interactive and things are. So like that's that I remember when I first heard the idea, I'm like, okay, it's a lot of niches that can break off and connect. Yeah. How has the response been to the idea, and how have you stayed committed to just pouring more energy into this? Because this is combining technology with obviously a functionality of transporting children, because young people, as much as people talk about them, are usually the most forgotten about group when it comes to marketing services like that.
No doubt.
And then also the tough thing, I know I had a problem with Follow the Leader, was selling to kids is just tough also because the child is the consumer,
Yes.
but adults are the customer.
Yes.
So sometimes what the adult wants is absolutely not what the child wants. And what
100%.
the child wants is nothing the adult is thinking about. So in that space, I found myself like it was so tough because I would get into the schools and I was like, okay, if I just get the kids, it'd be great.
Yep.
So I go to classrooms, I coach up, give my spiel, kids, hey, I like that dude. Let's go. Then it's like, now I'm going through the bureaucracy of the administration.
No doubt.
The adults.
No doubt.
The other processes and stuff like that. How have you balanced that dance?
So the person with the problem is the teacher. The end user is the student, but the customer is the parent. Right? But the other customer is the venue, the transportation company. So from the venue's perspective, I saw it happen at the museum and even as a sales director for a transportation company where we would lose money trying to collect money. So between 17 and 30% of revenue can be lost because the teacher is not paying for the trip. The teacher is the intermediary. The teacher collects the money from the students who get it from the parents. The teacher turns that over to the school. The school turns that money into more paper, i.e. a check, and then they put that paper in the mail and hopefully it makes it to the to the vendor, the venue.
All right, and I gotta add some extra sauce. When it comes to DPS, it's even more bureaucracy
Slow pay.
just due to the money, any money's being paid out after, as they say, like the Title I funding, like a couple years ago, you think of Spain, and it's like, look at these teachers, they stole $20. So it's like, this is a soapbox issue that Kari has because clearly the state of Michigan has siphoned off billions and millions of dollars from the schools, but they like to cherry pick a couple of black faces and try to make that look like the sign of improprieties and stealing.
Where's the lottery money?
You know, but that's a key one, especially right there.
Because if nothing else, we know that 70% of lottery money comes from places like Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. Why is that money not then reinvested in the areas where it comes from? Oh, it's going to Algonac and Ishkramim and Sault Ste. Marie and Port Huron and places where it's not a lot, whatever. Sorry, that could be a soapbox thing.
No, I got you. But I was just saying, like, after that, the response to that was coming up with more strenuous ways for money to be sent out. So meaning, like, money is collected, then sent to the district, then the district sends it out.
Yeah.
So now it's like...
it's an issue.
Like a 4-layer level.
Yeah.
You possibly
and it's net 90.
60.
Net 90.
90.
Imagine
worse,
net 90.
So
and
like,
it's not a small amount of money. Nobody.
You can make 3 months.
Nobody. Other than a company like ABC and Trinity.
$1,000.
Nobody.
For a field trip. It's like
so
by the time you get paid, you done forgot.
Bro, so like think about how that translates then. You have transportation companies that would love to be able to do business with these large schools and school districts, but can't afford to because they don't have a relationship and they can't float their insurance. So there was back in the day, there was a company called Safeway Student Transportation or Safeway Transportation, black and woman owned.
I remember Safeway.
Safeway.
I worked with Safeway one time. That lady was real cool, actually. One time
she was cool.
She was like,
and she was doing her thing.
We gonna need this.
She was doing her thing. Mm-hmm. She got the contract to work with DPS schools, but waiting on them to pay her.
Took her out of business.
Well, what happened was she lost her insurance because she couldn't pay her insurance premium because she's waiting to get paid for the work that she's doing.
Took her out of business.
It did. But what happened was she couldn't pay her insurance, so the insurance lapsed. DPS found out, and she ended up getting bought out, so to speak, from by ABC Student Transportation. But she had been in business 20 years. So the slow pay is a killer, and it stops a lot of companies from doing business and be able to grow their business. So TripSlip works as sort of like if you think about PayPal. If you think about how is the person I'm selling to a real person or is it a bot? Who's bidding on this? So the seller gets paid from PayPal because the payor has paid PayPal and PayPal pays them, and you make money both ways. So what'll happen is you fill out a trip slip. The teacher creates the trip slip. She says, we're going, pick us up here. We're going here on this date. please collect the money for us. And then that creates a unique QR code and a unique link that can be sent out via email, via text message, or scanned on this QR code. A parent fills it out. It's associated with that trip. The teacher now has a manifest of all the students' names, so she knows that their parents have filled out the trip slips. The money then goes into a digital wallet. That payment then goes directly to the vendor within terms that we create and decide, minus a small transaction fee. So the parents are paying a transaction fee, and the vendor, by way of you guaranteeing your payment, let's say this particular place charges a $7 admission. We're still going to charge a $7 admission, but maybe we give you $6 per kid instead of $7 because we had you on our platform. All you had to do was open your doors and they booked you. It didn't take any of your resources, any of your time. It didn't take an employee to do it, and you got a check in the mail. Or more like an ACH, not a check, because we want to eliminate the paper problem. And an issue that I don't ever discuss or talk about is that there are 55 million students from kindergarten to 12th grade in America. Just not pre-K, not college, just K through 12. 55 million students that take 3 trips per year on average each. If that is just one piece of paper for each of them, just one, which it's always multiple times, because they got to print out more, send a reminder home, which is paper.
Reminders.
Right.
Unless a girl I really thought was fine was going to it's like, hey,
got it right here.
Out now.
I did it.
Yes.
But
I'm going here.
I'm going.
What is this?
Can we sit together? We're going to sit together on the bus, baby?
I don't even know what this is.
We going.
The science of how.
I don't even want to go here. Now we have to sit together to make it worth it. That's it. But that's the thing. So even if it's just one piece of paper for those 165 million trips, that's 17,500 trees. Just from field trips. That's not after school programs, summer programs, extracurricular activities, sports and athletics, none of that. It's just field trips. So I think that it has huge market potential, and we're working as diligently as we can. How I've overcome it, I talk to teachers. We don't have to have the bureaucracy because the teachers have the pain point. They can use it outside of any systems that they have, in addition to any systems that they have, because it's on their phone. They don't have to worry about, and again, parts of this is still coming together. So it's the paper right now. It's just the paperless permission slip. So you don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about the paper money or the paper of the permission slip. But eventually a teacher will be able to go on her phone, say, I have a group of 3rd graders. We want to learn about history. Here are the dates we're looking at. And it'll generate a list of places that they can go. That's the goal.
That's good.
That's what we're working towards.
So with that and so much of the energy as people see, we wrap. I'm going to definitely bring you back much sooner.
Appreciate it. It's going to be
so
a year.
Many things. Hilarious. So, but now I got to close with the classic Detroit's different questions.
Okay.
Very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
88 Bronco, the killer Bronco, full size, the OJ as people call it, but it was white and burgundy. It was a stick. I did not know how to drive a stick, so I bought one.
I'm surprised you didn't pop that clutch like immediately.
Well, nobody would teach me how to drive a stick on their car, so I knew the mechanics of it. So I taught myself. And I knew how to shift up, but I didn't realize you could go from like 5th gear to 3rd gear. I thought I always would try to start back over in first.
So you were ready almost for bussing even before the
with that big old truck, sure enough. So that was it was an 88. I paid $1,500 for it. I was working at AutoZone as a service manager, and a guy came in and he said he was selling it, and I bought it off of him. That would have been in 2002, so I was like 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope you bought that in the summertime because learning to drive
it was still warm.
Manual in cold Detroit is but when you learn how to drive manual, you
all I drive.
Start liking it.
Yeah. Okay. Like most of my cars ratio 70% stick. Like the car I have now, I bought it for the sales job that I just had recently, but before that I had a Mazda 3 and I called that Joker Speed Racer.
And then this is the other thing. It definitely is a theft deterrent because most people don't.
It's the millennial anti-theft device.
The millennial.
You're not gonna borrow my car. You can't steal my car because you're not gonna be able to take off.
What in the?
And you feel like a race car driver. Yeah, I had a Chevy Aveo before my Mazda. That was Speed Racer, and my Mazda was blue. I called that one Sonic.
Hilarious.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. You get to play 3 songs. Woodward and Jefferson, what songs you playing?
Ooh, okay. I might need the Jeopardy music on this one. Okay. You got to do a Detroit classic. So that's Anita Baker, Same Old Love. You got to do that one. That's a good one. You got to do something that'll amp the people up. It's a deep cut, but it does it for me every time. Eminem, Rabbit Run.
Okay.
Third one. Keep it Detroit. You got to do an Aaliyah song. I would say.
Let's see if you're going to play the one that most people saying what I would think.
Try Again.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. What was you going to say?
Are You That Somebody? But
I love. That's a great one. That's a great one.
Percussionist. I don't know how you didn't pick that.
All of her songs.
It's
are
like every.
That's
I
a
want to
good
say
dance
for
song.
about 10 years after that came out, every drum line was playing at football games.
Dude. Yeah. And maybe that's why, like, I don't know. I want something that's going to inspire me. So Try Again.
If
first you don't succeed.
Lyric, I'm just thinking.
But no, you're right. That's a good one. Are You That Somebody? That's a great one. That's a great one.
Yeah. Last one. You can rename Detroit after one, or rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
That's a great question. Who would it be and why? Okay. You know what? Davis Cotton Boulevard, yo.
There we go.
And for the aforementioned reason, she changed this. She changed schools. She changed lives. She personally is the reason that so many people out here that I know are doing well for themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, and I can't think of somebody who's more deserving and who deserves those flowers. Like, you know, Coleman Young gets his props all over the place, and with good reason. Yeah. But yeah, Davis Cotton.
I'm gonna say this about Dr. Cotton, of also the impact. For everybody my age, the seen Lean on Me, and you sitting and you watching like people like their principal, but then you watching Lean on Me like, man, would nobody be outside of the jail rallying and stuff for any principal? That is one of the few that I do think it'd probably be like the outside of Mr. Gibbs.
No doubt.
And also in the world of Lean on Me, the way Mr. Gibbs was acting, I don't think a cadre of students would have been out there. But I like the movie.
No doubt. It's inspirational. It's that tough love.
People
Dr.
been
Davis,
like, hey, you kicked me out of school.
Hey,
Lock him up.
Lock him up. You called me a crackhead. Lock him up. You told me to kill myself. Remember, Sam? You told me, do it expeditiously. Don't mess around with it. Do it expeditiously.
It's like, what's the prison song?
Dog. He was like, you'll be dead in a year. He told homeboy, Kid Ray, he was like, you'll be dead in a year. Like, lock him up. Dog. I just watched that recently with my oldest daughter. She was like,
what is this? What
Dude.
is this?
Dude, she loved it. But no, Dr. Davis was one of those people who was tough but fair. You knew she loved you, and she knew your name. You know what I'm saying? She knew your story, and she knew what you wanted to do, and she held you to a higher standard. She held her administration to a higher standard. She held the teachers to it. She did not play around. She meant it when she said exceptional. Like, our school song is the Winans, Together We Stand. Like, we never have fights at DSA. Ask Dara. We didn't fight each other. We might have to fight the Murray Wright kids, but we didn't fight each other. We didn't fight because together we stand, divided we fall. We might argue. We might not like each other. It might even be some beef, but we didn't fight each other. You know what I'm saying? So my older brother, he came to DSA after me. Graduated the year before me. He graduated in the class with Aaliyah. I got a picture of the two of them. They took a picture at prom together, which is it's cool because I posted it and I look at it like these were two of the greatest to ever do it, who died prematurely. She died at 22? He was 36 when he passed. My younger sister graduated from DSA after I was gone. She came out in 2002. You know what I'm saying? So it's produced some legends. So Davis Cotton Boulevard, if we was renaming Woodward, because DSA is on Woodward. So why not? Yeah.
And how do people get in contact with you?
Achsha So-and-so on Instagram. So ACHSHA, so and so. Email is hey, like you're saying hey to a friend, not hey like a horse. Hey at trytripslip.com. And it's also Trip Slip Tours on Instagram. Yeah, that's it.
There we go. You'll see more from her. You'll see more from her. You'll see more from her. Thank you so much. Peace.
Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.